Greetings. This is the sermon for Palm Sunday, and the text is Matthew chapter 27, verses 11 to 54. What a contrast between what the crowds say in the story of Jesus' triumphal entry into Jerusalem and what they say at Jesus' trial before Pilate. When Jesus enters Jerusalem, the crowds are singing, "Hosanna to the Son of David. Blessed is the one who comes in the name of the Lord. Hosanna in the highest heaven." By the time Jesus is being tried before Pilate, however, they have changed their tune. Instead, after being persuaded by the chief priests and elders, they are shouting, "Let him be crucified." The people say much the same in the other three Gospels, but they have something else to say that is unique to Matthew's Gospel. So when Pilate saw that he could do nothing, but rather that a riot was beginning, he took some water and washed his hands before the crowd, saying, "I am innocent of this man's blood. See to it yourselves." Then the people as a whole answered, "His blood be on us and on our children." So he released Barabbas for them, and after flogging Jesus, he handed him over to be crucified. His blood be on us and on our children. This verse, as one commentator explains, has had such a horrific role in justifying anti-Semitism through the centuries, because it has been interpreted to mean that all Jews are responsible for Jesus' death, and that God broke the covenant with Israel and abandoned the Jews. The commentator goes on to say, this view has been so widely taught throughout Christian history that, one can argue, God's abandonment of the Jews is the most universal of all Christian doctrines. And according to another commentator, this doctrine has, until fairly recently, been believed and taught everywhere, always, and by all. 3 years ago, just before Holy Week, I was part of a group of clergy from our diocese that went on a pilgrimage to the Holy Land, and our group visited Yad Vashem, the Holocaust Museum in Jerusalem. Although the condemnation of the Jews as a racial group only arose in the modern era, without almost 2,000 years of Christian anti-Jewish teaching that was almost universally believed to be true, it is unlikely that the Holocaust would have been as horrific as it ended up being, because thanks to this teaching, Jews were pariahs throughout Christendom. But there is a way of interpreting that verse, of interpreting the people saying, "His blood be on us and on our children," that does not support anti-Semitism. We do not have to simply condemn Matthew's Gospel for including that saying in its Passion story. In order to make such an interpretation, we need to look at Matthew's story of the Last Supper of Jesus with his disciples. Had we read the longer version of Matthew's Passion story today, we would have heard that part, but in the interest of brevity, we did not. During the Last Supper, Jesus instituted the practice that we now celebrate as the Lord's Supper, the Holy Eucharist. While they were eating, Jesus took a loaf of bread, and after blessing it, he broke it, gave it to the disciples, and said, "Take, eat. This is my body." Then he took a cup, and after giving thanks, he gave it to them, saying, "Drink from it, all of you. For this is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins. For our purposes, we need to pay attention to the fact that Jesus says that the cup is his blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins. Some manuscripts of Matthew say that Jesus said blood of the new covenant, but our authorized translation omits the word new as a later scribal interpolation. Jesus is renewing the covenant that God made with the people Israel at Sinai. As Jesus himself says in the Sermon on the Mount, "Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have come not to abolish but to fulfill." And Jesus, offering his blood for the forgiveness of sins, fulfills what was spoken by the angel to Joseph in a dream at the beginning of Matthew's Gospel. You are to name him Jesus, for he will save his people from their sins. In Jesus' faith tradition, forgiveness of sin did not happen without the offering of sacrifice, the shedding of blood. At Sinai, Moses ratified the covenant with the people of Israel by sprinkling the blood of sacrifices on them. On the Day of Atonement, the high priest sprinkles blood before the Ark of the Covenant in the Holy of Holies for the forgiveness of the people's sin. Jesus had prophesied the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem, and with it, the offering of sacrifices to God for the forgiveness of sin. By offering his own blood for the forgiveness of sin, Jesus is renewing God's covenant with Israel by making himself the sacrificial offering, completed once for all with his offering of himself upon the cross. It is significant that Matthew writes that it was the people as a whole who answer Pilate, "His blood be on us and on our children." In Matthew's Gospel, reference to people, or in Greek, laos, is a reference to God's people, the people of Israel. What is happening at that moment is not that God's people are being abandoned by God, but that they are, despite calling for Jesus' crucifixion, unwittingly accepting Jesus' offer for the forgiveness of sins. Jesus' blood is now the means by which sin is forgiven, and the people say, "His blood be on us and on our children." In other words, Matthew's Gospel is saying that God both renewed the covenant with God's people when Jesus died, and offers forgiveness of sin through Jesus' death, and, it should not be forgotten, his resurrection from the dead. Even though they are calling for Jesus' death, the people of Israel are accepting forgiveness of sin. Through Jesus' saving death, God wills that even those who called for his death be forgiven their sin. At the Eucharist, we will remember Jesus' offering of himself for the forgiveness of sin, and we will receive his body and blood, his offering of himself for us and for all. That is what it means to say, "His blood be on us and on our children."